All right, welcome to Buffalo Plus. Mike Catalano along with Jenna and Dan Fates. Guys, I put up a mock draft. I don't usually do this, but we're all quarantined.
Cool.
Look, I have a semi-goatee going.
Semi.
I mean, really. So I put up a mock draft, just what the Bills are going to do, and I had him trading up, and I like A.J. Epinesa. We talked to him at the Combine. I know he didn't have the big numbers. I'll start with you, Jenna. Just the idea of trading up, and then to the guy that I have up there for the Bills.
I mean, I know Brandon Beane likes to be aggressive, and I would not be surprised if he goes after the guy he wants, trading up to do that. They have 7 picks this year in the draft. I don't think they're going to need to have 7 guys make the roster. Who's to say that 7 guys will even make their roster? So I could definitely see Beane being aggressive. Epinesa, I've seen some reports out there that he's a little bit slower, maybe not as athletic of a guy that I'm used to seeing Brandon Beane draft, but he's definitely a huge family type of guy, having that aspect. And I think Brandon Beane, as well as Sean McDermott, obviously love guys like that. He did have a great career at Iowa as well. So I think
blue collar.
He definitely has that aspect of it. Personally, I just think some of the times, some of the stuff from the Combine in particular doesn't impress me as much.
I think it's interesting because I love the idea of trading up. And I think that there are 3 needs that the Bills can address early, whether it's an edge rusher, somebody in the secondary, or a wide receiver. So I put up an article today in Buffalo Plus talking about 3 guys the Bills could go up and get, maybe late first round, early second round, guys that won't be there at 54, and then 3 guys that not necessarily safety picks, but that'll probably be there. I think a Denzel Mims. I think if they want to get a big wide receiver, I heard Daniel Jeremiah today talking about wide receivers, and you kind of want them like a basketball team. You want to have different sizes, different skill sets. I thought that was really interesting to hear because they need a guy. I want to see a guy that's 6'2", 210. I really want the Bills to get some height and some downfield ability. Denzel Mims is a great red zone threat out of Baylor, or they could stay where they are at 54, and Brian Edwards out of South Carolina could also be there. So I think Brandon Beane's going to have to weigh those options of what is it going to cost to go up and get your guy rather than just sitting there hoping that somebody's going to be there.
It's interesting because when you look at their wide receiver group, it really is a glaring need. I mean, let's face it, who's their tallest wide receiver? He's 6 feet tall, right?
Stephon Diggs,
Duke Williams.
I think their tallest guy.
Well, it's interesting, though, you make the point just talking about, like, basketball, you want to have 1 through 5. But I feel like the game of basketball now is becoming where everyone kind of has a similar skill set or is expected to be more of a fluid, versatile player. So I feel like with Brandon Beane, and it's been talked about the fact that they want speedier guys that can create that separation. Now, obviously, you want guys that can catch the ball as well and have that, ability to make contested catches. But I feel like, and especially the way Brandon Beane has built his wide receiving core, that really hasn't been a thing that he's been after. So I'd be kind of surprised to see him go out of his way to get a guy. Now, it depends on what round, of course, that they draft, but go up to get a guy that is a bigger target.
I just think that you got to keep giving Josh Allen more and more help. Look, he signed 11 guys this offseason. 7 of them were on the defense. This is a deep draft with wide receivers and running backs. He doesn't necessarily even have to go up and force a pick even early in the second round. Look, he's going to be able to get what I think could be a fringe 4th wide receiver, day 3. Antonio Gandy Golden out of Liberty. Mike, I know you had him in your mock draft. He's another guy that kind of fits that build, 6'4", 220. I'm not saying he's going to be the number 1 guy, but just to add another dimension that teams will have to scheme against instead of every single person being 6 foot.
You're right, Dan. And the fact that they did go out and get a proven guy like Diggs also allows them to take a little breath with whatever speed guy or wide receiver they bring in, that he's a guy who can build his way up to what's going to be on this roster for this year. Here's what I envision with Beane, right? We've all said he's going to be anxious sitting there at 54, sitting there through that whole first night and then day 2. So I'm thinking, if I'm Brandon Beane, I know what ammunition I have. And I probably have 2 or 3 or 4 players that I would conceivably trade up to get. Mm-hmm. So my eye is on this draft, and I'm looking. And let's say it's Epinesa or whatever player it is. Or say it's one of the wide receivers that he sees falling, right? Ayuk, maybe one of those guys who's been a first rounder, second rounder, third. All different grades that maybe he's just waiting. And he could move up to get any one of 2, 3 different positions. Like it may
Agreed.
not be for one guy. I think a couple of years ago when he went for Allen and he went for Edmonds, those were the two guys he wanted.
Yeah.
And he was
Correct
for those two. I think this draft, he might have several guys that he'd be willing to part with picks.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
talked about it on the Part of My Take podcast. He mentioned that you still have to remain focused because a guy like a DK Metcalf, who was supposed to be this top prospect in the first round, kept falling. Now, I think about somebody like that, like you said, an Ayuk, if he becomes available, I think then maybe that's one of the guys that he's just too good to pass up at 38 if they can get up there and make a move.
The problem is they're so far back, with the first round, not at least in this point being into it. There's so many options you can go with, considering the fact that the draft board never goes how you think. And because of that, it's hard to pinpoint this is the direction that they're going to go. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they waited to pick up a wide receiver till later on, because there are so many guys and because of how deep they are at receiver this year in terms of the draft pool. I don't know. There's a lot of decisions to be made, and I think it's really going to be reflective of even last year. They never expected Ed Oliver to still be on the board.
Right.
And he was, because of the way everything shook out, especially with the Giants taking a quarterback. So it's so dependent on that. And I think because of that, it's going to be where do the chips fall and go from there.
And the other thing I was going to mention with Beane, I think he's pretty confident in his evaluation. I don't think he's a groupthink guy. So there are going to be some players that for one reason or another start to drop. And I know you've seen it before. I think some GMs get a little antsy when the whole league is passing on somebody and they don't want to be the guy who jumps in, almost thinking like, what is it I don't know about this guy? I think he's pretty confident in his evaluation of players. And if it's somebody he likes and it happens to drop because other people don't like him, I don't think he's going to have any problem going for that player either.
No,
I mean, he's shown that he's moved up, twice in his first draft, twice again in his second draft. This is a unique draft because I felt like in years past, they needed a quarterback. They needed a middle linebacker. They needed positions. Like I said, he could go edge rusher late in the first round, early second round. He could move up to get an edge rusher. He could move up to get a corner, whether it's a Travion Diggs, Stephon Diggs' younger brother out of Alabama, or he could sit and wait. It's almost an issue because now instead of having one problem, he's got a couple of different ways he can go. Now it's going to be interesting to see how he plays it, like Jenna says.
Well, and we know he loves to go best player available, but at the same point, there's going to be a lot of great players available by position group, depending on which way the board goes. But I do think it's interesting because running back, I'm curious to see how he does address things. Considering, Devin Singletary was a third-round pick last year. Is he going to use that second pick to take a guy like someone to offset Singletary? Or when will he kind of make that move to be like, okay, this is now the time that we're going to pick someone up?
It's going to be interesting to see what he decides to do. He does have options, and the biggest reason he has options is because he's built up a pretty good roster. Yeah. And he's not as desperate maybe for certain position groups as he's been in the past. All right, I know your mock drafts are going to be coming up soon. Check that out on buffaloplus.com, and make sure you join us Thursday night, 7:30 to 8. We're going to be all over social media, plus on 13 Wham ABC in Rochester, for our Let's Talk Football live show leading right up to the coverage of round number 1, where Brandon Beane might or might not be involved.
Yes.
Yeah. By the way, how do you guys think Beane was with the mock draft, the practice draft that they did on Monday, when some of the GMs were a little confused?
I'm confident he was just fine.
Dave Gettleman, what do you think?
I'm not confident that he was just fine.
Hello? Yeah. You can't trust those old guys.